Congratulations! You now own Central Park, all 843 acres of it, right in the middle of Manhattan. The city just handed you the deed, the legal paper that says you own it. The first thing you probably want to know is what it is worth. The second thing, and this one arrives about 3 seconds later, is how you make any money off a place you are not allowed to sell and cannot charge anyone to enter. Because here is the situation you have just walked into. Behind the postcard lawns and the Instagram boats, this place is secretly a money machine that works in ways almost nobody talks about. And if you do not understand where the cash actually moves, your new asset just sits there, costing a fortune every year while you watch. So before you spend a single dollar, let us look at what the people who actually run this place are doing right now. We will walk through who really pays to keep the grass green, who quietly collects over $1 billion a year off your land, and the strange little economy operating inside the park walls that you would never notice just walking through. Here's the first thing you need to know about your new 843 acres. Back in the 1850s, when the city first carved this rectangle out of Manhattan, buying the land cost $7.39 million. That is not a typing mistake. At the time, it was more than the United States would soon pay for the whole state of Alaska. Even then, someone looked at a wet patch of land up in the city and saw the most expensive park on Earth. But that number is very little compared to what happened in 2005. And this is where it gets strange. A top New York City property appraiser named Jonathan Miller got a call from a magazine. They wanted him to price Central Park as if it were an empty lot you could build on. He thought it was a silly question, but he did it anyway. In roughly 3 minutes, he came up with $528.8 billion. His own words, a purely hypothetical, unlikely, non-scientific wild guess. And here is the part that hurts. It does not matter, not a cent of it, because state law and a century of legal rulings make it almost impossible to sell a city park that is on the map or build on it. You are holding one of the most valuable empty lots on the planet, and you can never, ever turn it into cash. Picture a mountain of $100 bills piled to the sky, the whole thing fixed to the floor, forever, on purpose. You own a huge green thing that just sits there, unable to be sold. Okay, so you are holding an asset you cannot sell, but at least you are in charge of running it, right? About that. To understand who actually runs Central Park, you have to go back to the 1970s. New York City had no money. The money crisis had cut the city's budget deeply, and the park was a mess. It was, by all accounts, dangerous, full of crime, a dusty, dying place with trees falling over. The city owned it on paper, but it could not afford to fix it. So a group of private citizens stepped in. In 1980, they formed a nonprofit called the Central Park Conservancy. It was a rescue operation. They raised money, they planted new gardens, they brought the lawns back to life, and they slowly rescued the park from collapse. By the late 1990s, the park was healthy again. And in 1998, the city made the setup official with a management agreement. It basically handed over all daily care, maintenance, repairs, and operations to the Conservancy. What this means on the ground is strange. In reality, that deed is just a formality. New York City Park still owns the land on paper. They set the big rules and provide the police. But look at the workers. The person gathering leaves, the crew fixing bridges, the gardener planting flowers, they are mostly Conservancy employees. They are paid from a private charity's checkbook, not from city taxes like a park in the Bronx. You own the park on paper. A private charity you do not control runs every inch of its daily life. So now you know who runs your park, but who pays for it? Here's where even the word public starts to feel a bit stretched. It turns out your park's money is not a normal city line on some budget sheet. It is a way for donors to put their name on something. Listen to this. The Conservancy pulled in $108.7 million from private gifts and fundraising events. The city added just $28.9 million. That is roughly 4/5 private. And sitting behind this whole operation is a $467.9 million pool of saved money, a huge reserve of cash. This is not a small fundraising event. In October 2012, a wealthy investor named John Paulson wrote a single check for $100 million. That is the largest gift ever given to New York City's park system. If you walk through the new Davis Center at the Harlem Mere, a lake in the park, a $160 million project, you will see the Kempner Boardwalk, the Gottesman Pool, the Gottesman Rink, a skating rink. Those are not old historical names. Those are the lead donors. The Chairman's Circle, the group giving $100,000 or more every year, looks like a list of big names in finance. Names like Ackman, Griffin, Loeb, Mondel, the Tisch family. The park cannot legally make a profit. It has no entrance gate. Yet, it is still one of the most respected names money can buy for a fraction of what a Manhattan top-floor apartment costs. And many of its biggest donors are exactly the kind of people who would have a park view. A family swims in a pool named after the person who paid for it, with no idea whose money poured the concrete under their feet. Your park's grass gets cut mostly on the generosity and tax breaks of a small circle of billionaires. And a bench or a rink with your name on it is what they get in return. And this donor gift shop goes all the way down to the smallest object in the park, a single bench. Walk down the mall, the park's wide tree-lined walking path, or along any winding path, and you will see them. Small metal message plates are fixed to the wooden strips, each one carrying a private message. For the love of my life, in memory of a Sunday walk, to the city that gave us everything. Those plates cost around $10,000 each. Multiply that by the thousands of benches spread across your 843 acres, and you are looking at millions of dollars in personal thank you notes quietly fixed into the landscape. It is the same naming rights logic as the Gottesman rink, just made tiny. A love note on a park bench that also keeps the gardener paid. The whole place is furnished by donors, right down to the seat you are sitting on. Remember that property appraiser Jonathan Miller from earlier? The one who joked he could price the whole park in 3 minutes? Well, 10 years later, he did a much more serious study for the Conservancy. And this time, he paid no attention to the park and focused on the windows facing it. Because the money is not in the park. The money is in the view of the park. Miller worked out the numbers on actual apartment sales. 2 identical apartments, same building, same floor plan. One faces a brick wall, the other faces 843 acres of trees and water. That park view unit is worth a lot more. On Central Park South, the extra value was roughly 15%. On Central Park West, over 60% extra per square foot. And on Fifth Avenue, a shocking 75.6% more. This is not some rough guess. This is something you can measure, write down, and check. And the extreme end of the logic is a top-floor apartment at 220 Central Park South that sold in 2019 for roughly $238 million. That is the most expensive home ever sold in the United States. Nobody who owns a Fifth Avenue apartment pays the Conservancy a cent for that view. But the park's perfectly kept look, cared for by that same Conservancy, is included directly in the price when they sell. Your park creates its real money not from the people inside it, but from the silent value it adds to every window that faces it. That apartment extra value we just saw is your park's real product. And when you spread that extra value across a whole neighborhood, it does not just make apartment owners richer, it quietly fills the city's money box. The Conservancy asked for an economic impact study to put a hard number on this. In 2014, the park added $26.07 billion in extra market value to nearby properties. This was in the 2 neighborhoods right next to the park. The city taxes that extra value. Add it all up across property taxes, tourism spending, and fees, and the total hit $1.045 billion that year alone. The biggest part, over $875 million, is the real property tax extra cash, created purely because the park exists. The tiny permits and snack stands inside the park, the hot dog carts, the film shoots, brought in closer to $11 million. Very little by comparison. So your free park, the one with no gate and no ticket, is one of the most productive tax assets in the 5 boroughs, the 5 large districts of New York. It pays for the city's police, schools, and garbage pickup, but not by selling itself. Instead, it makes everything around it so valuable that the tax bills grow by over $1 billion a year. Now here's where the names from earlier make sense. That same small circle of billionaires writes the 7- and 8-figure checks to the Conservancy. Paulson, Ackman, Griffin, they are mainly the very people living in those park-facing apartments. The ones whose property values swing by tens of millions based on whether the lawns are perfectly kept, the flower beds look perfect, and the trees are healthy. Their checks are not just charity. They are a direct, self-interested insurance policy on their own property. A $100 million gift sounds huge until you see it protects a view that adds tens of millions to a single top-floor apartment. The park gets its running cash. The donors protect their own wealth, and the city collects the tax extra from the raised values that those same donors helped create. It is a system where everyone is connected and benefits from the same machine. The person in the top-floor apartment gives money to the charity. That charity cuts the grass, which lifts the apartment's price. That creates the taxes that pay for the city, and you, the owner, stand outside the process entirely, watching it spin. So the real money is outside the park walls in the property taxes. But what about the money actually moving inside the park? It turns out even the small stuff is licensed, permitted, and fought over like a tiny state. Your park is a nature reserve. It's a film set for over 300 shoots a year, and it's a strictly controlled system of small vehicles for hire. In 2014 alone, the Conservancy gave out permits for 164 film shoots, 331 TV shoots, and 218 photo shoots. All that activity, together with the food carts and the park restaurant, the boathouse, and the carousel, sent just under $11 million to the city that year. And the details get stranger the closer you look. Horse-drawn carriage rides have long been something tourists do in the park. For many years, they lined up on the street. Then in 2019, the city moved their waiting line inside the park by law. So now, tourists queue up right inside the park. They also have a specific limit. When a horse safety heat measure called the Equine Heat Index hits 150, the whole operation must stop. Bicycle-powered taxis are limited citywide to about 850 licenses. They have been legally required to be powered only by muscles. No electric help. Since 2008, you cannot just plug in a battery and roll through the park. You have to pedal. A horse waits in its park line. Nearby, a film crew sets up the 300-second film ever shot in the park, using your trees as a background. Meanwhile, a bicycle taxi driver earns every dollar by pedaling. Even the smallest business activity inside your free park is tightly permitted. It's politically fought over, and it creates fees for someone. So, that is your Central Park. You are holding a plot of dirt worth over $500 billion that you can never sell. The real work of keeping it alive is done not by you, but by a private charity, paid for mostly by billionaires. The exact same billionaires whose own apartment values depend on every blade of grass staying perfect. The money is not in the gates. There are none. It is in the silent tax bill the park sends every property owner with a view, a sum that rolls past $1 billion a year. It looks like a free public space for everyone. It runs like an asset that can never become cash. It stays green thanks to the very people who get rich living next to it, and you, the owner, see not a cent. Welcome to ownership. The view is the only payment you will ever get. So enjoy your new backyard.